Hello, my name is Rafael Seiz Ortiz from the Department of Applied Linguistics, and in this grammar session we're going to see the differences and the uses of as and like. These are very important particles, and we're going to see the uses of them one by one and then compared as and like. The objectives are to know the functions and uses of these two very important particles. We want to know when as and like must be used depending on the context, the meanings, and the circumstances. And it is very important, it's always an objective to differentiate as and like in the use of language. Let's start with the uses of as. One of the meanings of as is at the same time as. And we use it when two things happen together at the same time. For example, as the bulb was released, the proper flow was established. Also, when something happened in the middle of doing something else. In the example, as I was checking the engine, one of the pipes broke. We can add the word just to make the expression just as. That can be used with the meaning of exactly at that specific moment. For example, just as the pilot got out of the cabin, there was a terrible noise there. And we can also use this with this meaning when two things happen together in a longer period of time. Such as in the example, I began to know more about nanotechnology as I studied the topic in detail. With this meaning, we have to differentiate between as and another similar particle, when. We use as if the two things happen at the same time. For example, as I drove home, I listened to the radio. Simultaneous actions. Whereas when is used when one thing happens after the other. When I got home, I had some supper. The two actions are not simultaneous in this case. Another meaning of as is because. It can express the reason, the cause of something. And in this case, it's the synonym of because and since. In the examples, as I saw some oil on the floor, I decided to check the main pipes. Or, I did not use titanium as it is too expensive. With this meaning, again, we can differentiate between as and when. As has all, in this case, a causal meaning. In the example, as they live near us, we used to see them very often. In the case, it is because they live near us. There's a causal meaning. Whereas if we use when, it has a time meaning. When we lived near us, when they lived near us, we used to see them very often. In this case, it's during the time they live nearby. It hasn't got a causal meaning. Now we're going to see the uses of like. Like means similar to or the same as. In this use, it is a preposition, so it may be followed by a noun. This metal is very brittle, like glass, by a pronoun. In projects like this, budget is always a problem. Or followed by an ing form. For example, this is like drilling into concrete. Like has another important meaning. It means, for example, and in this case, it can be used in the same contexts as such as in the example. In this application, we must use a very flexible material like rubber. Like is the same as if, to express how something or somebody looks, sounds, or feels. This is another typical use of like. This building looks like or looks as if it's going to collapse. Or I don't feel like or I don't feel as if I have succeeded in the company. Now we are going to compare these two particles, as and like. As and like followed by subject and a verb mean in the same way as or in the same condition as. Let's see some examples. The engineers didn't move anything they left everything as or like it was. But if we use a shorter subject, well, after the particle, we use like, no as. For example, they should have done it like this. Sometimes as followed by a subject and a verb has other meanings. For example, after the particle do, you can do as you like. Or in certain expressions, such as you know, as I said, as she expected, as I thought, etc. Like is not normal or common in these expressions, except if we use the word say. As an example, as I said, like I said yesterday, we have run out of petrol. We use as also in certain given expressions, such as usual or as always. As usual, we will calculate the pressure with this formula. Or the very important expression, the same as. The size of the road is the same as the size of the table. Please do not use that, but as in this case. When they are prepositions, that means followed by a noun, as and like have different meanings. They are clearly different. On the one hand, we have as. We will see the two examples. As a technician engineer, I spend a lot of time in the factory, or I work as a builder. In this case, I am a technician engineer or a builder. It is my job. This is the meaning. Whereas if we use like, in the examples, like a technician engineer, I spend long hours in the factory or work like a builder. Here, the meaning is that I'm not a technician engineer or a builder. This is not my job. I am just making a comparison. And finally, as a preposition means very often in the position or in the form of. Such as in this typical example of technical English. Steel is great as a structural material. To conclude, we must say that as and like can sometimes have the same meanings very often, and sometimes they have a different meaning. And it's very important to know the differences in order to use them well. That is why they are very easy to confuse. And we must understand how they work and how they are used in the different contexts and under different circumstances. I hope you found this presentation useful to differentiate and to use as and like well. Thank you very much for your attention.